Right, everybody, welcome. Most of us have been here for the past few days. Some of us haven't, but we're talking about the great sage Vyasadeva, who compiled all the Vedic literature. His image is here on our screen, and he's looking a little sad. He compiled all these literatures. He compiled the Vedas, 20,000 verses, which includes the Upanishads, all kind of important teachings on ritual and karma, and then transcending all of that and going into deeper spiritual ideas in the Upanishads. He summarized the Upanishads in 54 aphorisms in a text called the Vedanta Sutra. Then he wrote a masterpiece, a huge, great epic, the Mahabharata. I mean, just this incredible work that it reached out to the masses. Everybody could become absorbed in these stories. And it also kind of found a way of synthesizing the contrast between the Vedic duties of the Vedas and the more spiritual teachings of the Upanishads in the book called the Bhagavad Gita, which is 700 verses from within the Mahabharata. So this is an incredibly significant work. Unbelievable. And then he still continues and he creates the Puranas, 18 collections of stories, 400,000 verses. So altogether, this is something like 520,000 verses, Sanskrit poetry, philosophy, theology. It's just an unbelievable gift to humanity that he's created. It's invested in it is his compassion. Invested in it is his practically unlimited knowledge, right? He creates a body of literature that all the sages will be borrowing from and drawing from. Through this contribution, the school of philosophy called Vedanta is established, helping people understand the nature of the self. What a contribution, yes? And still, look at him. Oh, it's breaking my heart seeing him like that. He wasn't feeling quite right. He was feeling, I've done all this work, but something's not quite right. And it had to do with the way that he presented these works and the way that they might be misunderstood. So I want to read a little something that goes into this, and let's see if this is something that you can relate to or not. Again, this is from just some of my own writings. But let's dip in. Let's blow this up. Expand it. Okay. Now listen to this. See if you can relate to this at all. Ancient India's spiritual tradition shines a light that continues to illuminate hearts and minds around the world, undiminished by the passage of time. It integrates philosophy, storytelling, and practices in ways that are illuminating, colorful, and endlessly fascinating. Yet the tradition in its entirety can be confusing. There are countless books on yoga and countless teachers and lineages drawing from the same tradition. Shared ideas are explained in seemingly contradictory ways. So many practices are prescribed that it can be difficult to even know where to begin. A myriad of gods and goddesses are put forward, along with conflicting ideas about who they are and who we are in relation to them. Within the tradition itself, there has been an enduring debate over how to understand its teachings, a search that seems never to fully settle. Even seasoned students struggle to untangle it and find a single coherent message. Does that ring true with any of you? Right? There's this vast tradition. You can walk around just Rishikesh and see so many temples, so many sadhus, so many yoga centers, and they're all drawing from the same texts, but they have different ideas about what they mean. Even very, very different ideas about who we are in relation to all of this. Am I God myself, and I just need to realize it? Is God? Are there many gods? Is there one God? Is there one God and all the other gods come from that God? Isn't it challenging? It can be challenging. There's so many different ideas that are growing from it. Okay. But the tradition does explain itself. And with a bit of guidance, one can discover a unifying principle that ties it all together. There's a kind of genius at work here, and a way to see its many parts as an integrated whole, revealing a clear purpose behind its many voices. Untying the knot begins with the knowledge that many centuries ago, the entirety of the tradition's teachings was restored and repackaged by one remarkable person. And that, of course, that was Srila Vyasadeva, who we had up there. So this was kind of the introduction to this chapter that I didn't read to all of you earlier. But the idea is that there are these vast teachings, and how do we understand them? And really the presentation that I'm building off of is from one of the great, most important philosophers in the history of Vedanta, and his name is Srila Jiva Goswami. And Jiva Goswami he wrote a book called the Tattva Sandarbha. It's a bit dense philosophical book because it's meant to respond to philosophers and Vedanta commentators that preceded him. But he provides such a beautiful and clear answers to how to tie this all together. And I suppose coming from like a Western background, particularly, many of us, we're here from all different backgrounds. But if you come from a Western background, it can be very confusing. Like, let me contrast these two things. I'm going to skip. We've described these different texts, and we've described how the Vedas speak to you. You see, there's a state of awareness or state of consciousness that is called vikarma. Vikarma means I want the things of this world. When I look at this world, what do I think about it? I think it's here for me to enjoy. That's the point of my life. That's what I'm pursuing in life. Let me find ways to enjoy this. And I could do that in a completely reckless way. I could do that in a completely selfish way. I could do that without recognizing that all the things that I've received in life, including my own body, the family that I was born in, and all the care that I was giving, the sun, the moon, the river, I don't see any of these as like gifts to me. I just see them as there for the taking. That's called vikarma, right? And the yogis will say that they have a word for a person who's in that state of awareness. Dvipada pashu, right? Dvipada means, who can say? Yoga teachers?
2 legs.
Oh, yeah, 2 legs. Yeah, two-legged and pashu. An animal with 2 legs, right? In other words, commonly animals are getting along of course, there's all kind of animals, but maybe like 4 legs or more. This is a 2-legged animal. In other words, you're a human being, but your awareness is on the same level as the animals. You haven't used the capacity that you have to try to really understand what's going on in the world that I'm in. Okay. So then a step up for that person, if they come in contact with the 4 Vedas as we discussed them earlier, then they might say, oh, these things are actually all gifts. Oh, there is a higher power. There's a higher power, right? That provides the sun, the moon, the rain, everything. I should recognize that. I should appreciate that. How will I show my appreciation? Can anyone suggest? Through these rituals in the Vedas. The Vedas will prescribe rituals, and the priest can come over and help you in the way that the Vedas prescribe, express your gratitude. Thank you, God of the sun. Thank you, God of the rain. Thank you, Goddess of the river. Thank you for all of these gifts that you give. I appreciate it. And actually, I would like more. Please continue to provide. And that's called, that's coming from the Karma Kanda, the karma section of the Vedas, how to bring the good material things into life. And if you read those Vedas, it's going to speak to you like this is the best possible way to live. When you get this, you've really understood a lot about life. But then at the end of the Vedas come the Upanishads, and they have a very different message. It's like they're going to speak to you on another level. When you've enjoyed the material life and you still feel empty, then these next texts are going to say there's something more, right? Actually, the external things will never satisfy you. Turn within, So now they're going to speak to you on that level. And then you may achieve a deep peace through the teachings of the Upanishads and renouncing the world, but you still may feel empty. Well, then there's more books to speak to you on that level. And at each level, they're telling you this is a great thing to do. It really encourages it. It makes you, it doesn't say, it doesn't come off like, well, why don't you take the next step? It comes, but there's much more than that. It presents it like, do it. This is great. I want to read you a little something from the Bhagavad Gita. Now, the Bhagavad Gita is a text that clearly will present bhakti as the highest evolution. It'll validate many yoga paths, but it becomes clear that Krishna is asking Arjuna, he's identifying bhakti. He'll say quite straight out, right? Of all the different paths of yoga, what is it? Yoginam api sarvesham, amongst all the different paths of yoga, all the different yogis. Madgatenantar atmana, one who's abiding in me deep within themselves. Shraddhavan, bhajate yomam, and worshiping me with great faith. Same yukta tamo mataha, that yogi is the most connected, right? It's the most advanced. And there's other similar statements. But now listen to this. Krishna is going to say here in text 720, those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires, right? Kamais taister hritya jnana. Their jnana has been stolen, right? By what? By their kama, by their material desires. Those whose intelligence has been stolen by material desires, they surrender unto the devas, unto the demigods, and follow the particular rules and regulations of worshiping according to their own natures, right? It's all there in the Vedas. If you have material desires, then you worship these demigods to receive material benefits. It's a Vedic teaching, okay? Now listen to this. It gets very interesting. Next verse. Krishna's saying, I am in everyone's heart as the super soul. As soon as one desires to worship some demigod, I make his faith steady so that he can devote himself to that particular deity. Now compare this idea to Western religion, where God is saying, people are worshiping someone besides me. I'm in their heart. I'll encourage them to go ahead and do it. It's not, I'm a jealous God. Should someone worship anyone else, they will be condemned to hell forever. It's not like that at all. Krishna's saying, if they took a step from being a two-legged animal up to worshiping the devas to get the things of this world, they're evolving. They're moving forward. I'll encourage them in that faith. Everybody got that? Right? He's going to also talk about another, he'll criticize this a bit more. He'll say, endowed with such faith, he endeavors to worship a particular demigod and obtains his desire. But in actuality, these benefits are bestowed by me alone, right? The deva can't provide it without me providing it to the deva. They're just like a middleman. They could just turn to me, right? But it's okay. It's okay. It's a step forward. Now listen to this. Men of small intelligence, what is it? Alpa medasa, right? Small intelligence. Men of small intelligence worship the demigods, and their fruits are limited and temporary. They'll get boons. They'll get wealth. They'll get, this and that. But those things come and then they go. They're not getting something permanent. Krishna's implying I could give them something permanent, right? Something far more valuable. But if that's what they want, and if that's where they're at, and their desires are making them behave that way, think that way, then I'll respond to them and encourage them along the path. Those who worship the demigods go to the planets of demigods. But my devotees ultimately reach my supreme planet, beyond time, beyond the ups and downs, beyond the what's the word? The temporality? Is that the right word? Okay, the temporality of the material world, right? They can go beyond that. And this speaks a bit to the idea of when people say, it just doesn't matter what path you pick, they all go to the same place. Well, Krishna's saying it's a little bit more nuanced than that, right here. Okay. in text 24. Now he speaks, that was speaking to the people that were very influenced by the Vedas. Let me do the Vedic worship of demigods to receive the things of this world. Now he talks more about the Upanishadic, Jnanic faith that people have. And he says this, Avyaktam vyaktam apanam manyate mama buddhaya. Unintelligent men who do not know me perfectly think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead Krishna, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. Right? In other words, there are those that interpret the Upanishads to say that all form is illusion. Right? So therefore, the form of Krishna is also illusory. They'll say that the form of Krishna is just a manifestation of the Supreme Brahman, which has no form. And that the form of Krishna it appears and then it disappears. It's, in one sense, it's ultimately not real, not on the same level as the non-personal Brahman, right? He's saying people that say, he's saying it straight here. It's very, we mentioned yesterday that these texts, the Itihasas and the Puranas, including the Bhagavad Gita, they're meant to clarify the earlier teachings that are found in the Upanishads. So this is how it's doing it. Krishna's really speaking very clear and plain, not cryptic. This is very clear language. He's saying, unintelligent people who do not know me perfectly, they think that I, the Supreme Personality of Godhead, was impersonal before and have now assumed this personality. And now what he does next is really important. Due to their small knowledge, they do not know my higher nature, which is imperishable, avyayam, and supreme, anuttamam. When he uses this language, like avyayam, this is the language you find in the Upanishads, right? These are the exact same words, avyayam, anuttamam. These are the exact same words that you're going to find in the earlier Upanishadic texts. But he's saying that me, Krishna, in this form, when you heard that the Supreme Absolute was avyayam, I'm telling you that was me that they're talking about, without getting into the details. Now I'm going to fill out the details for you. And so don't think that the ultimate is impersonal. The impersonal energy is one facet of the ultimate person. And I exist as the ultimate person eternally. And he'll say one more verse I wanted to read. I'm never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. They won't see me. They won't understand who I am, right? For them, I am covered by my internal potency, and therefore they do not know that I am unborn. Ajam, again, that's straight up out of the Vedas, right? Straight up out of the Upanishads. I'm Ajam, unborn, and Avyayam, again, inexhaustible, right? So he's being very clear that, let me clarify what was going on in the Vedas and the Upanishads. Ultimately, I'm the person behind it all. And you can come to me directly, like that. So I'm reading this to just help show how the Eastern approach, how Vyasadeva's approach is more nuanced than, say, the Abrahamic texts, which are kind of like, I'm God, worship anybody else, and you're finished, like that. And so I wanted to get into that a bit and highlight this more, because I think it'll help us understand how Vyasadeva presented himself, how he presented these teachings. And we have a question from Shami. Let's get the microphone over there, please.
Thank
Yes.
you. My question is about the unintelligent and foolish. What does it mean actually? Because like when I was reading the Bhagavad Gita, I was thinking, yeah,
Pretty heavy words, right?
Yeah, and like it also makes a little bit of supremacy about like from other people, right?
Well, let's just look the words up in the dictionary, shall we? Would I find the word unintelligent, or would I have to look up intelligent? Yeah. Intelligent. Having or showing intelligence, especially of a high level. Okay. The ability to acquire and apply knowledge and skills. So they're lacking in their ability to acquire knowledge and skills. Even they may have a great brain, be able to memorize tons of information and so on, but somehow they lack something. Sometimes even a brain that's very powerful, even an IQ that's very high, because we have certain desires or motives in life, there's a reason we have trouble accepting something that's true and something that other people can see who may even have a lower IQ. You know, sometimes I use the example of someone falls in love with another person, right? And they're thinking, oh, they're the most wonderful person in the world. And everybody else can realize, no, this is the wrong person. You know, because there's a desire in the heart, and it seems that this person is going to fulfill those desires, they're overlooking, they're not seeing, their intelligence is not properly acquiring the knowledge that needs to be, that everybody else can see because they don't have that desire, right? And so our emotions, our desires become filters of truth. And so when Krishna says unintelligent, I don't read it as being insulting language. Or when he says foolish, I don't read it as being insulting language. I read it like just straight up practical, like they're lacking the ability to acquire knowledge, right? At least in this field. And so I know that it can sound arrogant maybe or something like that, but I don't read it that way. I just read it like, yeah, they're lacking the ability to understand clearly. Yes, microphone.
Hare Krishna, could
Hare
you
Krishna.
explain the concept Yoga Maya?
Yoga Maya, yes. It's a bit of a diversion, but yes, I can. Oh, because it's covered by the Yoga Maya. Yeah, you know, usually we use that term in a particular way. We contrast in our lineage. That the word may be used in broader context. Generally, in the lineage that we practice, in this lineage coming from Sri Chaitanya, we reserve that word in a particular way. That there's Mahamaya, meaning that's the illusion that most of us are in. We enter into a virtual reality of the world that we're moving through, and we're covered by a particular energy that confuses us, and it in the sense that we believe that I am this body, that I am this mind, and we pursue desires that are separate from our true interests. That's Mahamaya. Now, that's the illusion for people that have turned, and in one sense, turned away from God, and they want a world of illusion. Then there's another energy that influences people that have turned towards God and want a deep, intimate relationship. And for that to exist, there may also be a truth that needs to be hidden from one. And that truth is that Krishna is God. Because if you want to love him with great intimacy, then you have to forget that he's God, right? If you're going to be very intimate, like if you're going to love Krishna like he's your own child, then if you see him as God, you can't have that parental expression, because it's like part of parental love is he needs me. He's dependent on me. I must care for him. That's part of the love and the loving emotion. So to have that experience, that needs to be covered, and Yoga Maya is the covering of that covers that. It's the Yoga Maya energy that allows for all of Krishna's leelas to play out. And even Krishna becomes influenced by that energy to enjoy these pastimes. Here the word Yoga Maya is used. It would seem that Mahamaya would be the term most that you would expect to hear here. But Krishna's saying, in a way, he's just saying they're covered by my energy. I think we can say it here, like that here. Is that okay? Thank you. Okay. I wanted to read you a little bit of what I wrote on this topic about how Eastern and Western visions can be different. And it may just help us understand how it becomes confused, why these texts don't speak so directly and make everything real simple. Why is it confusing? Why is it so vast? Are you ready for that? Yes? Yes. Everybody? Yes. Feeling good?
Yes.
Okay. Let's see. Okay. Okay, I'm going to read you the last paragraph that I read. I'm going to read you more than the last paragraph. I'm going to read you a little bit of what I read yesterday. about the sage Vyasadeva after he'd written all these literatures and how he's feeling, okay? This is worth repeating. Everybody tuned in? Right into the heart of Vyas now we're going to go. One might expect that such a sage, having fulfilled his sacred duty, would feel profound satisfaction. Yet Vyasadeva himself writes of a lingering sense of incompleteness that surprised him. He wrote, "I have been strict in my vows as a yogi. With a sincere heart, I have shown deep respect for the Veda. I've honored my teachers and performed all the appropriate rituals. I have lived honestly and truthfully, and through the Mahabharata, I have extended the knowledge of the Veda and the path of Dharma to every segment of society, even those who had never been granted access to it before. And yet, still, this feeling of dissatisfaction remains. I feel somehow incomplete." One might think that by writing so extensively, what I want to share with you right now is this Vyasadeva, after writing all these books, sharing this feeling that he was having, it's not just him venting, it's not just him randomly sharing his mind, it's him giving us a key to understanding everything. We need to understand why he was dissatisfied. He's showing us why he was dissatisfied, and it's there to help us understand all his works. It's going to give us a clue. So one might think that by writing so extensively, Vyasadeva had left nothing uncovered. So why the lingering sense of incompleteness? Ironically, it was the very size and variety of his works that became an issue. In meeting people where they are at and leaving room for many approaches, he left the highest aim less sharply defined. To better understand this, it helps to consider some broad differences between Eastern and Western ways of thinking. Okay, so this was the thing. He left the highest aim less sharply defined. It becomes a little confusing if you read all of his books to understand what's the highest aim here. Okay, he needs to clarify that. He won't feel satisfaction until he clarifies that. And we're going to get to that in the coming days. But for now, let's read some of these differences between Eastern thought and Western, and I've labeled it here, Eastern enlightenment, Western salvation, contrasting spiritual perspectives. Okay, everybody with me? Mm-hmm. All right. For those raised in a Western context, exploring Eastern thought may begin with recognizing its more fluid, nuanced approach to understanding the divine. Western thought, having developed out of the Western or Abrahamic religions of Judaism, Christianity, and Islam, tends to be more rigid. Now, I'm going to speak in generalities here. I'm sure there's scholars of different faiths that can point to exceptions, and I'm perfectly willing to accept that, but I'm speaking in general now. Western religions often lead towards exclusivism, proclaiming that truth and salvation could be found through their path only. Eastern thought tends to be more accepting, recognizing variations of the same universal truths spoken through many traditions, and believing that the divine chooses to work that way. Okay? That makes sense? Have any of you maybe raised in the West, taken an interest in Eastern thought, especially because of this? Right? That how can I not see that these people in this other tradition are understanding the same thing that we're understanding, right? How can I not appreciate that and see that as genuine? If they've understood the same thing that I've understood and they're living a beautiful life, how can I think they're condemned to hell forever, right? No, I see that they've got the same truth that I've got. And I think God works that way. He speaks in this tradition and he speaks in that tradition. He's speaking in all these traditions, right? He chooses to work that way. That's more the Eastern idea. So the first had to do with this exclusivism. And second, generally Western religions highlight the distinction between God and the self. God being all-powerful and spotlessly pure. The self being insignificant, entirely subordinate, and born into a sinful condition. You've all heard that before, right? Eastern thought leaves more room to explore the self's oneness with God. It teaches that beneath the mind and body, the self is eternally pure, and it encourages seeing the divine everywhere and in everyone. Okay, some of the Eastern teachings ultimately say you are that one God. You just need to realize it. Others say you are made of the energy of God. The purity of God is your own purity. It's just that it's been covered or distorted as it comes through your mind and body. But if we could get underneath your body and past your mind, we'll see what's there is spotlessly pure, right? Interesting? Okay, different ideas. Western religions generally teach a relatively simple formula. The soul lives. Did I skip one? Yes. The scriptures of the Abrahamic religions teach that the worship of anyone or thing other than the one true God is a great sin, whereas Eastern traditions allow for the worship of many gods and goddesses, as well as natural wonders like the sun, moon, mountains, rivers, animals, and even stones. Right? You see all kind of worship going on in the East, right? In the West, it's like if you worship anything or anyone that's not the supreme God, you have just committed the most horrible offense, and you will suffer forever, right? And it's a little challenge. This was one of my main. When I started getting into spirituality, the Bible was one of the first places I really started to look. Even I was raised in that tradition, but it wasn't. I was just kind of going along with it because my family was making me go to church. But at a certain point, I started to examine it out of my own curiosity, and I found so much wisdom and beauty, particularly in the life and the teachings of Jesus. But it never made sense to me why a God that is all loving would condemn someone eternally, right? To suffer eternally. How does that make sense, right? And here the idea is if you worship that wrong person or that wrong thing, you condemn yourself to suffering forever. How does a compassionate God allow us to suffer forever like that? It never quite clicked with me. So the Eastern ideas, we just read, Krishna saying, ultimately what we'll find when we carefully study all these texts is a picture is drawn where there is a lot of times when Western people look at Eastern religion or Hinduism, they say, oh, there's many thousands of gods. There's all these gods and goddesses. What a crazy idea. It's not exactly that if you look at it carefully. What it is it's saying that this universe is just like anything else. It's just like a town. It's just like a city. It's just like a nation. In any of those conglomerates, there has to be some organization and people taking up certain roles. So in this universe, there's an electricity department, the sun, right? It provides the light, it provides the heat. And there's a head of that department. And we can call that person Surya, right? And we can call him a god, but it's a god with a small g, right? It's a god that maybe we should look up God as well. Huh? Yeah, we could say demigod. But let me look up God, see what we come up with. Okay, in Christianity, God. In other religions, a superhuman being or spirit worship is having power over nature or human fortunes, a deity, an image, an idol, adored, admired, or influential person can be called a god. Okay, so the idea is here that these gods are lowercase gods. They're not understood as the supreme gods, but they're understood as influential people. You're in charge of the sun. You're in charge of the rain, right? And these positions are given to people just like you and I. We could play those roles in a future life, or we may have played them in a previous life, right? Having that really important role. But they're not seen as the one God. It's monotheistic in the sense that The belief is there's one supreme God, and that God is empowering these other individuals to play these important and influential roles. And maybe not everybody fully understands that, but they see, let me go to the head of the rain department so that I can have rain for my crops. Let me go to the head of the learning department, Goddess Saraswati, because I want my kids to do well in school, etc. They approach these gods and goddesses like this. Did you have something to share, Prabhu?
Yeah. In Western, the whole term God is actually causes a lot of trouble. So I know one devotee, he said rather than refer to him as devas, because then you don't get into that conflict with the Western theology, which causes those who have this philosophy, we gotta we're always fighting against him. No, we're not polytheistic. Anyway, use the term deva, it's easier than
Yeah,
God.
sometimes I understand that. Yeah, I understand that logic, and sometimes someone's going to say you worship many gods, so then we have to respond to that too. Yeah, thank you. Okay, so I'll read that again. The scriptures of the Abrahamic religions teach that the worship of anyone or anything other than the one true God is a great sin, whereas Eastern traditions allow for the worship, showing respect, showing gratitude through rituals especially. They allow for the worship of many gods and goddesses, as well as natural wonders like the sun, the moon, rivers, animals, mountains, and even stones. Right? So it's a much broader idea. It's not saying that there's not one God, and it's not saying that I'm minimizing my understanding of who that God is and what they provide for us. It's actually, I see it all in connection to that one God. Just like, let's say there was a child, like a wealthy child that lived in a mansion and the parents were ultimately the providers, but that there are also other servants in that home. Well, the parents would want the children to be respectful to the servants, right? You're the one that's doing my laundry every day and cleaning the home, and thank you, I appreciate it, right? It's like, no, don't do that. It's your parents that are paying their paycheck, and it's only talk to the parents. No, respect the servants in the home that are being paid by the parents because they're providing such a wonderful service, right? But know that ultimately your parents are the ones that are providing everything here. And so similarly, we can worship the different devas and devis, but understanding that they're all empowered. This is what Krishna was saying in those verses that we read in Bhagavad Gita. If I just want the things of this world and I think they come from these devas, I don't understand the whole picture of what's behind it all, right? Because I'm lacking that broader picture, I'm aiming really low when it comes to human evolution. I'm thinking human evolution means enjoying greater wealth, enjoying greater prosperity, taking birth in a higher family, getting some other kind of good karma. No, there's so much more beyond that. Okay. And then finally, this last point here. Western religions tend to teach a relatively simple formula, that the soul lives only once in a single body. At death, one is judged for the eternal fate. At death, one is judged and the eternal fate determined. If one has obeyed God's commands and shown sufficient faith, then their salvation is assured. And if not, it is denied. By contrast, Eastern traditions tend to be more nuanced, emphasizing the enlightenment of the individual. Salvation is seen more as a natural result of enlightenment, which through reincarnation, the soul can pursue through as many lifetimes as they need to finally reach it. Okay, so in other words, it's not so much, the Eastern thought is less, I need to get to heaven and not go to hell. In its more advanced stages, it's like, I need to understand who I am. I need to understand who God is. That's my focus. Let me understand that. And when I understand that salvation, freedom from the sufferings of this world, is naturally accomplished, right, through that understanding. Make sense? Okay. Any questions about what we've read so far? Anybody? Yes. Microphone, please.
For me, it's very difficult to understand why Krishna loves us so much. Why? Because I know I'm not super, I will never be able to, okay, I love my husband, I love my dog, whatever, but it's not really, I cannot imagine why because he's so unbelievable, so powerful, I don't know how to explain. Always so perfect in every point. And I cannot understand why to care about someone like me, so small is insignificant. I cannot imagine his love.
It is interesting, isn't it?
It is.
It is a bit mysterious.
Sorry.
But it's wonderful.
It is wonderful. It makes me confused.
You know, in one sense, the parent is so much more powerful and influential than the child. When you have that little baby, what can the baby do? It can't do anything. But the parent loves it so much, right? It's not what we accomplish or what we, it's just something that what we are, and we are that pure energy with our own individual awareness. And his default is love. Right? By nature, he's full of love. It's his nature to love, and he'll love every living being, regardless of what it's accomplished or what it hasn't. That's just his beautiful nature. Thank you. No, good question. Okay, let me read a bit more. This enlightenment involves the inner work of yoga, diminishing the ego by understanding one's own mind, its desires, and its deeply rooted sense of identity. So depending on the many different mindsets we have, what's best for one individual may not be best for another, or what's helpful on one rung of a person's evolution may not be helpful at the next step, right? So these texts are speaking to people on all different steps. Given these differences, it's no surprise that Vyasadeva's writings would be more complex. There's no jealous God granting just one chance to submit, ready to condemn someone forever for the sin of misdirecting their loyalty towards a false God. There's no need to draw a line in the metaphysical sand and insist that one immediately relocate to the orthodox side. The knowledge of the Veda can meet you where you are at and show more patience with your spiritual evolution. Whether you aspire for material prosperity, renunciation, or divine love, whether you see the divine as a person or as impersonal energy, your faith will find encouragement in Vyasadeva's literature. Is that clear? Okay, this is what we're talking about. So again, why the despondency? The very quality that makes these teachings so rich and captivating, their breadth and ability to meet seekers where they are at, can also make them difficult to navigate. This point is essential to discovering the unifying principle in the teachings of the East and seeing their widely varied ideas as expressions of one divine consciousness. Vyasadeva's concern was that in his efforts to meet people where they are at, he had been unclear. Taken as a whole, his writings were paradoxical. Seekers might misinterpret the message of the Veda in two ways. And as we speak in future days, I'll be referring to these two ways that we might misunderstand what he was saying through his broad body of literature. One, they might mistake introductory or intermediate teachings for the conclusion, stopping short of pursuing higher spiritual truths, right? They might say, getting the things of this world through the Vedic teachings, that's the highest thing. Or they might say, finding peace through renouncing this world is the highest thing. Those are the beginning and intermediate teachings, right? And in thinking those are the highest things, they may never strive for the highest goal, which is divine love. So again, they might mistake introductory or intermediate teachings for the conclusion, stopping short of pursuing higher spiritual truths. Or two, alternatively, they might assume that all Vedic teachings are of equal value and that each person should simply choose whichever path suits their inclination, right? So, in other words, if you went to a school and there was like first grade arithmetic, and then like later on there was like higher forms of math and calculus and all of these things as they go up, and you thought like first grade arithmetic was like the highest, or you said it just doesn't matter, pick whichever one you like. No, it's evolving, it's going in a certain direction to get the complete understanding, right? It's not just pick whichever one suits your whim, but it's a gradation that's growing. So you might think the lower teachings are the highest teachings, or you might think that all the teachings are equal and you just pick one. But the fact is that they're moving in a direction of evolution. They're taking you to higher and higher levels. Okay. Either type of misinterpretation would confuse one and inhibit their full spiritual evolution. Vyasadeva chose to nurture seekers' faith at whatever stage they were at, trusting that sincere practice would gradually purify their hearts and draw them to the next level of his teachings. His purpose had always been to build a ladder of spiritual ideas and practices, leading seekers step by step to the highest goal, the complete fulfillment of the soul. But now he wondered if sincere seekers would be able to identify that goal. Sitting in his Himalayan hermitage, searching his heart for the source of his sadness, Vyasadeva thought, I believe that the reason for my dissatisfaction may be due to my failure to sufficiently describe devotional yoga, which is the path dearest to the most evolved spiritualists. The word he uses is the Paramahamsas, they're called the great swans, right? Those spiritual beings who are of the highest order. To them, the dearest teaching is the path of bhakti, the path of devotional yoga. Bhagavad Dharma is actually the word that he uses when he writes this. Maybe I had that highest thing, it's so beautiful, it's so precious, it's so sacred, that he's careful about putting it out there. Some of it is super intimate, and he's kind of kept it hidden, worried that people might not be ready for it or might not understand it. And now he's thinking, I think the way that I'm presenting these texts is people aren't going to understand that they have still this higher potential to love God in this beautiful and intimate way. And that's why, again, let me pull that up again. That's why he's sitting there in his hermitage, feeling a little bit like, oh, I've written so much and it's just not quite right. Everybody understand? It's so important to understand who Vyas was, what his works were, the way that they unfold, and why he was feeling dissatisfied. And now the important question comes, what does he do about it, right? And what he's going to do is he's going to write one more text. And this text will be his great masterpiece. This text is where he's going to explain everything. This text is where he's not going to be the least bit cryptic. He's going to get right to the point. And he's going to drive this point home again and again and again for 18,000 verses. But in doing so, he's going to compose his greatest poetry, and he's going to show the life of the Supreme in intimate detail so that everybody can see it, understand it, and fall in love with it. And that's where we're going to actually pause where Vyasa is right now. We're going to speak about one really important subject, which is understanding these three stages, karma, jnana, and bhakti. That's what we're going to talk about when we come back, not tomorrow, but on Monday. I'm sorry, not tomorrow, but on Tuesday. And we're going to speak about that. And once we've understood that really clearly, we're going to come back to Vyasadeva and see where he goes from there. Thank you all so much for spending this time with us. It's been a joy to spend the morning with you. And if you'd like to get earlier or later classes, please speak to Gabriella. She'll be outside in the front. She can hook you up with that. And please stick around for the Kirtan. Thank you so much. Hari Om Tat Sat.